My son didn't even look ashamed when he dropped the collar on the kitchen counter. "It's just a dog, Dad. Grow up." The collar still had her fur stuck in the lining. Music pounded behind him, strangers stomped on the porch I built with my bare hands. He thought he'd thrown out a pet. But what he tossed was the last soul in that house who never asked me to earn her love. The first thing I noticed wasn't that Daisy was missing. It was the smell. Beer, leftover grease, and something burnt, as if someone had tried to microwave tinfoil again. I stepped into the kitchen and almost slipped on a puddle of soda. The counter was cluttered with red plastic cups, crumpled napkins, and an overturned popcorn bowl. And there, right in the middle of it all, sat Daisy's collar. Just sitting there. Empty. It still had her fur on the inside. Golden strands clinging like they didn't know they'd been abandoned. I didn't breathe for a second. Behind me, a door creaked, then slammed. "Morning," my son muttered as he shuffled in shirtless, yawning. "Place looks like Vegas." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. He glanced at me, saw the collar in my hand, and shrugged. "Relax, Dad." She was in the way. In the way? My voice didn't rise, but something in it cracked. Yeah. I couldn't have a bunch of people over with a dog running around. Somebody offered me a few bucks, said she wanted a golden for her girlfriend's Instagram video. He opened the fridge, pulled out half a beer, and took a sip. "You sold her?" "She's not dead," he said, like that was a comfort. "She's out having a great time, probably getting more attention than she ever got here." I stared at the collar. "You sold Daisy for a party?" He looked at me like I was the crazy one. "Come on. You always say this place could use some life. So I brought it. Had some people over. What's the big deal?" "She wasn't a decoration," I said. "She was family." My daughter walked in, still wearing last night's makeup. She caught the look on my face and groaned. "Are you still on about the dog?" "She's not a dog," I said. "She was my dog." "Dad," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're being emotional. Derek didn't hurt her. She's just with someone else now." Derek grinned behind her, clearly amused. "You're acting like I sold your child." I took a step forward. "You don't see the problem with treating loyalty like it's disposable?" "Jesus," he muttered. "It's a collar, Dad. Get some perspective." "No," I said quietly, "it's my collar. From my dog. In my house." That last word hung between us. House. Not home. Not anymore. My daughter folded her arms. "Look, we're trying to grow up here, okay? Throw a few events, meet people, maybe do something with this place. You're always hovering like some retirement home ghost." I said nothing. Because I suddenly felt like one. Outside, I heard laughter. The backyard was full of people still lingering from last night. A couple was dancing by the fire pit. A man in a snapback was spray painting something on the back fence. "My fence." "I thought this was a one-night thing," I said. Derek didn't even look up. "We're thinking about turning this place into a content house. Airbnb hybrid. Parties, shoots, maybe sponsored events. I've got interest already." I nearly dropped the collar. "And where do I fit into this?" I asked. He laughed like it was obvious. "You don't." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they surprised me, but because they didn't. I turned around and walked into the yard. The fire pit was still warm. Cigarette butts floated in the birdbath. A lawn chair was tipped over near the rose bush I had planted for my wife on their first anniversary. Someone had spilled nacho cheese on it. "Excuse me," a girl said behind me. She wore sunglasses indoors and was barefoot. Are you, like, the owner? I nodded slowly. Can you tell Derek we're out of ice, she said, then looked around with mild disgust. Also, this place is super dated. Are you guys remodeling? Or flipping? Flipping? I asked. Yeah, she shrugged. I mean, that's what Derek said. He said his dad's old place was a goldmine. She walked off before I could say a word. I looked down at the collar again. It felt heavier than it had 15 minutes ago. Back inside, Derek had his feet up on my coffee table. My daughter scrolled on her phone. I want her back, I said. Too late, he said, not looking up. They already took her. Signed papers and everything. And it's not like she'll even remember you by tomorrow. I walked past them both, collar still in hand, up the stairs to my room. On the landing, I paused and looked down. The party had moved on. My voice didn't matter here anymore. My memories didn't matter. My rules didn't matter. Just the space I left behind. The knock came just as I was sipping my second cup of coffee, black and bitter, the way she used to make it. It was too quiet. No bark. No rustling from the porch rug where Daisy always dozed. I opened the door to find little Benny from next door, still in his school hoodie, backpack slipping off one shoulder. Mr. Carson, he asked, squinting. Where's Daisy? She didn't bark at me today. I froze. She's gone. He frowned. Oh. Okay. My mom said maybe she was sick. She misses me, right? I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah. She misses you. He walked off, dragging his backpack. I stood there a moment longer, still holding the cup. I looked down at the porch, muddy shoe prints across the boards I'd refinished just last spring. 2 cigarette butts by the flower pots. And sitting in the corner, kicked behind a planter, was one of Daisy's old tennis balls. Dirty. Forgotten. Inside, my son sat at the kitchen table like he owned it. His girlfriend, Madison, I think, was sprawled across the couch, legs draped over my wife's old quilt. We need to talk, I said. Sure, he said, not looking up from his phone. In private. No need, he said, casually tossing the phone down. Let's just say it. You're not exactly subtle these days. I stepped into the kitchen, placed my mug down hard enough to rattle the spoon inside. You had no right to sell my dog. She's not your property, he said, still calm. Besides, I live here too. You live here because I let you. He laughed, loud and sharp. No. I live here because I belong here. You? You're just squatting in your own museum. I stared at him. Excuse me? You heard me, he said. This place? It's dead. It's a graveyard with walls. You walk around like a ghost, mourning a dog, a wife, a past. But we're alive. And we need space to breathe. So your solution is to erase everything? Exactly, he said, leaning forward. New life needs new air. So here's the deal. His voice dropped an octave. Move out, or move aside. I looked past him. My daughter had just entered, still tying her hair back. She didn't say anything, but she didn't look surprised either. You're giving me an ultimatum? I asked. You've had your time, he said. We want to turn this place into something that works. Parties, rentals, maybe make some income. But you hanging around, moping about a damn dog, doesn't help. You sold family for followers. He stood. No, Dad. I sold inconvenience for opportunity. And I'd do it again. I turned to my daughter. You agree with this? She looked away. I think you're being too emotional. Too emotional. I picked up the collar from the table, placed it in front of them. This is all that's left. And even that's too much for you. Madison giggled from the couch. Is that the dead dog's thing? EW. He waved her off. She's not dead. To me, I said, she might as well be. You didn't just give her away. You erased her. He crossed his arms. You have 3 options, Dad. 1. Get on board and stop making everything so dramatic. 2. Sit in your room and sulk like a child. Or 3, he leaned in. Move out. Because the next party won't have room for anyone who slows us down. The front door opened again, letting in sunlight and more voices. I heard giggling, a clatter of plastic cups, and a burst of music. Oh my God, a girl said, her voice sharp and nasal. Is that him? Another chimed in, you didn't say your dad still lived here. I thought this was, like, your place. Wait, are we squatting in an old guy's house right now? That's kinda sketchy. Their laughter stabbed more than their words. I stood there, still holding the collar. And then I walked to the hallway closet and opened it. Silence behind me. What are you doing? Derek asked. I didn't answer. I reached for the old crate with my wife's recipes on top and set it aside. Took down my duffel bag. Unzipped it. Folded the collar carefully and placed it inside. You're seriously leaving over this? Madison scoffed. No, I said. I'm leaving because I already did the hard part. I raised a son who turned his inheritance into a nightclub. My daughter stepped forward. Wait. Dad. Too late. I zipped the bag. Then I looked at them both. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. Because you just lost the one thing that ever truly stayed. I walked out the front door, down the steps, past the porch I built with my hands. They didn't follow. But the neighbors were watching. Old Mrs. Henson stood across the street, phone in hand. I saw her filming. I saw Mr. Carter whispering to his wife. Even the postman slowed down, eyeing the house as I walked toward the end of the block. The whispers had started. Did you see him leave? After what his son did? I heard they threw a party and sold his dog. Public humiliation. That's what it was. But oddly, I didn't feel ashamed. Because if they wanted to burn the house down socially, then I'd make sure the ashes spelled out my name. At the corner, I turned back once. He was standing on the porch, arms crossed, watching. But he didn't wave. He smirked. And that's when I knew. He thought he'd won. The first thing I checked after checking into the motel was the drawer, the one I kept locked inside the office back home. The copy of the house deed, my original mortgage documents, the emergency savings ledger I kept updated every year. But of course, it wasn't there. Because I wasn't home. And now I wasn't sure what was still mine. I opened my laptop and logged into the property tax portal. I expected to see the same stable words I'd seen for 2 decades, owner, William Carson. Just a name. No fuss. But this time, the screen stuttered. There was a new line. Co-owner, Derek Carson. Added 3 days ago. 3 days. I scrolled faster, heart hammering now. There it was, refinance filed, joint ownership, digital signature approved. I hadn't signed anything. I stared at the screen so long I forgot to breathe. The collar was still in my bag, zipped into the side pocket. I reached for it like instinct. The feel of the leather, worn and cracked, was the only real thing left in that moment. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Let the voicemail catch it. Then the ping of a text. From my daughter. Dad. Derek told me you knew about the refi. Why didn't you say anything? Say anything? I gritted my teeth and replied. I didn't sign anything. 3 dots danced for a moment. Then came the reply. He said you gave verbal. He needed it to secure things before the party. I sat back in the stiff motel chair, the air conditioner clicking louder than it should. Verbal. Secure things. These weren't family words. They were real estate words. Words you used when you didn't see people anymore, just property. That night, I drove back to the house. Parked down the block. Lights were on. Music again, softer this time. No big party, just a dozen cars, soft bass thumping, and laughter floating out through the cracked open windows. I walked past slowly, hood up. A group stood in the driveway. Some new guy in a blazer said, "So it's gonna be like, half content studio, half crash pad. Genius, man. Prime location." Yeah, Derek's voice answered. And best part? We locked in the equity before the old man pulled out. Signed for both of us. I stopped walking. Signed. For both of us. He wasn't just lying to me, he was bragging about it. I moved along before anyone spotted me. Next morning, I called my old friend David. He'd been in finance law before retiring. Told him everything. Emails. Refi notice. Name changes. There was a long pause on the other end. Then he said, "You need to come in. Bring everything. And William, do it fast." At the diner across town, I met him in a booth. He slid a folder across the table. What Derek did wasn't just unethical, it may have crossed legal boundaries. If he used a digital signature without your permission, that's fraud. I opened the folder. The forms were there. The new loan details. The clause listing my house as collateral for a startup event company called Homegrown Energy LLC. I laughed, bitter. He made a company? David nodded grimly. Under your roof. With your house. The waitress came by. Poured coffee into my untouched cup. "You okay, hon?" she asked gently. I looked up at her. She knew me. She'd served Daisy water in a bowl under the table for years. I managed a small nod. As she walked away, I whispered, "Not yet. But I will be." David tapped the folder. "If we move quickly, we can challenge the filing and prove it was forged." "Do it," I said. Later that afternoon, I drove back toward the house, not to confront anyone, but to see for myself what they were turning it into. A delivery van pulled up as I parked across the street. Guy in a polo hopped out and opened the back. "Lighting rigs?" he asked a girl on the porch. She checked her phone. "Yeah. Set it up inside near the piano. He wants a rustic grandfather core vibe." I nearly laughed. That piano had been my wife's. Rustic grandfather core? They were rebranding my grief. And then I saw it, inside the front window. A paper sign taped to the wall. Carson House, content starts here. A new logo. A fresh font. And in the corner, a photo of Derek, in front of my house, smiling like he'd built it from scratch. The front door opened and he stepped out, phone to ear, grinning. He didn't see me. But I saw everything. As the delivery guy rolled in the lights, the machine beeped, card declined. He paused, looked back. Payment bounced. Derek froze. I smiled. The strike had just begun. The kitchen was quiet, too quiet, and yet something in the silence felt rehearsed. The floor was cleaner than usual. Too clean. The party debris was gone. The scent of bleach lingered, as if they'd tried to wipe something more than just spilled beer. Something like guilt. I walked in with slow steps, collar in my coat pocket, hand resting on the stitching like a secret weapon. They were all sitting at the table. Derek at the head, arms spread like a king. Madison beside him, chewing gum with the confidence of someone who didn't own a toothbrush. My daughter, Anna, sat to the side, eyes on her phone, but not scrolling. This wasn't breakfast. This was a tribunal. "We need to talk," Derek said, steepling his fingers like a man who'd seen too many movies. I sat. "Go on," I said, voice flat. He leaned forward, wearing that stupid confidence he inherited from no one. "Let's just put everything on the table. You're either a wallet, or a problem." I didn't move. "If you want to stay here and support what we're building, great. Pay your share. Keep quiet. Let the next generation take the wheel. And if I don't?" He smiled. "Then you need to leave. Because every time you mope around here with that damn dog collar and your sad eyes, it brings down the energy. We're hosting creators next week. People with followings. This house is changing." I looked at Anna. "You agree with this?" She didn't answer at first. Then, finally, "He's doing what you never did. He's building something." I chuckled. Not out of amusement, out of pity. "Building?" I said. "He took a house I bled for and turned it into a hashtag." "Dad, don't make this harder," she said. "It's already decided." That line, "already decided," landed like a nail in my chest. Derek leaned back, satisfied. "We gave you the choice. Either fund the future, or get out of the way." I looked around the table. At the walls I painted, the floor I nailed down. The fridge I installed when Anna broke the old one trying to make popsicles at age 10. And I nodded. "Okay," I said. Madison looked disappointed. "That's it?" I stood slowly. Walked to the hallway. Opened the closet. Inside was my old duffel bag, the same one I used when my wife was in hospice and I didn't leave the hospital for 3 weeks. I placed the collar inside first. Then my clothes. My passport. My documents. The framed photo of Daisy as a pup beside my wife on the porch, still young, still warm, still full of years ahead. They didn't follow me. Didn't protest. Didn't offer a hug. Just watched. I walked back down the stairs with the bag over my shoulder. Anna looked up, a flicker of something on her face. Was it doubt? Regret? I couldn't tell. Derek stayed seated, victorious. "You'll regret this," he said, but it sounded automatic. "No," I said. "You will." I opened the front door, and the wind blew in, a cold one. The kind that shakes shutters. The kind that makes you question whether the storm is just passing or just beginning. As I stepped out, Derek called after me, "You're not gonna last a week out there." I didn't turn. I didn't need to. Because he didn't know what I'd already done. The night before, I logged into every financial portal we shared. Mortgage payments, cancelled. Credit cards, locked. Insurance, frozen. Utilities, transferred back to me. Everything he thought he had. I took it with me. They thought I'd beg. Instead, I walked out the front door. And took the house with me. The motel room smelled like old coffee and carpet shampoo. The kind of place you don't sleep in, you just rest with your eyes closed and your guard up. I hadn't unpacked fully. The collar still lay zipped inside the side pocket of my duffel, untouched since I placed it there. But somehow, every time I passed the bag, I felt its presence, like a heartbeat in cloth. On the second morning, just after 9 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up this time. "Mr. Carson?" the voice asked. Crisp, female, firm. "This is Brenda Kirkman with Clearfield Title Services." We're calling to confirm your approval of the refinance deed and the digital signature applied on file last week. I sat up. I never signed anything. A pause. Then paper shuffling. I see. Then, sir, did you authorize the power of attorney filed by a Mr. Derek Carson on your behalf? My pulse slowed, like my body didn't trust what it had just heard. No, I said clearly. Absolutely not. I understand, she said, voice sharpening. I need to advise you to speak with legal counsel immediately. What I just read to you may constitute a fraudulent act under your state's property laws. I wrote her name down, every syllable. Then I hung up. The room suddenly felt too small. Too quiet. I stepped outside into the open air and walked 2 blocks to the diner. Diane, the waitress, saw me and paused mid-coffee pour. Well, she said softly, approaching. You okay, William? I've had better weeks. She nodded. Heard something about the house. Folks are talking. Of course they were. Clearfield wasn't a big town. And when a man who'd lived in the same house for 30 years suddenly checked into a roadside motel with bags and no dog, people noticed. What are they saying? She hesitated. That your son's throwing parties like he owns the place. And that you disappeared. I looked down at the collar still in my jacket pocket. I didn't disappear. I left before they made me vanish. She leaned in, eyes soft. You want me to call Pastor Clark? Or anyone? No, I said. I need a lawyer. The good kind. Later that afternoon, I met David again, my retired lawyer friend. He didn't smile when he saw me. Got a call from Title Services, he said. They flagged the file the moment you denied it. He slid a folder across the diner table. Inside, 2 documents. One was a scanned copy of a power of attorney with my name scrawled across the bottom. Digitally signed. Time-stamped. It's not your signature, David said. No. But they've already started transferring loan portions. You'll need to file a fraud claim before the disbursement completes. I flipped the next page, an email chain between Derek and a broker. My dad's on board. He's just old school about tech. Use the attached doc. I'll explain later. The rage didn't hit like thunder. It hit like ice. Silent. Expanding. I clenched the collar in my hand beneath the table. Public filing? David nodded. This goes into court. County office. It's public record. Good, I said. Let everyone read it. When I walked back out into the diner parking lot, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail. It was Madison's voice. Hey, old man, just so you know, we're rebranding the front of the house. Gonna change the porch color. That hunter green is so depressing. Thanks. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I drove straight to the county office. Filed the fraud report. Had a notary stamp my written denial of consent. Then I copied the file and handed one to David. By 5 p.m., the news had already started leaking. I stopped at the corner gas station to grab water, and the clerk, Jimmy, barely 20, stared wide-eyed. Yo, dude, you're the dad, right? From Carson House? Excuse me? That TikTok house. Your son's page went nuts last week. But now everyone's saying he forged your signature or something. He laughed awkwardly, realizing what he just said. I mean, that's not true, right? I didn't answer. I just handed him a 5. On the way out, I heard him whisper to another kid, that's his dad. The one who got screwed. Back at the motel, I sat on the bed and took the collar out of the duffel. I placed it on the desk, beside the printed report from the fraud claim. The tag gleamed in the motel light. Daisy. Carson Residence. 1999 to 2024. She was gone. But somehow, her loyalty still stood taller than my son's legacy ever would. That evening, a news alert buzzed on my phone. Clearfield man sues son over alleged property fraud. The headline wasn't what caught my eye. It was the photo. My porch. My house. And my son, smiling like nothing ever broke. By sunrise, I was no longer a father. I was a tactician. The motel room, with its humming fridge and flickering desk lamp, had become a war room. I laid out every paper I owned, deeds, bank statements, tax forms. The collar rested on the table, too, like a silent witness. My only ally. 7:03 a.m., I logged into my bank account. Mortgage auto payment, cancelled. Click. Insurance policies, frozen. Click. Credit card authorized users, removed. Click. Utility accounts, changed passwords, rerouted notices to my email. Each tap of the keyboard felt like a chisel against the marble of his illusion. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. By 7:28 a.m., their empire was built on expired logins and bounced payments. I watched the sunrise filter through the blinds, soft and golden, like the fur that once pressed against my feet under the breakfast table. Then came the fallout. 8:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. Anna. Hey. The lights just flickered. Is something up with the account? I didn't reply. 8:17 a.m., another text. Derek. Did you change the damn Wi-Fi? Can't log into anything. No answer. 8:26 a.m., call from the power company. Sir, just confirming that your automatic payments have been cancelled. Yes, I said. Manually handled from now on. I sipped motel coffee that tasted like cardboard, but still, it was better than the bile they'd left behind. 8:43 a.m., Madison's voice rang out from a voicemail. What the hell? The Spotify's down. The speakers aren't syncing. Fix this or I swear I'll post every damn thing. Deleted. 9 a.m., I called the bank and revoked cosigner status from the joint account they forgot I remembered. 9:12 a.m., the first crash. Outside, on Derek's story feed, a video uploaded, accidentally, I assume. A contractor arguing at the doorstep. You promised payment up front. The bank says card declined. Derek trying to wave it off. Must be a mistake, try again. Beep. Declined again. You waste my damn time, the man yelled, storming off. Behind him, one of the camera crew caught the whole thing. By 9:20 a.m., the clip was deleted. But not before I'd saved it. At 10:07 a.m., I stopped by a local bank branch. Quiet. No need for confrontation, just confirmation. I'd like to revoke all third-party access. Permanently, I said. The teller, an older woman, smiled. Glad to hear it, Mr. Carson. As I signed the paperwork, she nodded at the name on the form. Your son? I didn't reply. She didn't need me to. 10:48 a.m., my daughter's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. Voicemail, Dad, we don't know what's going on. Please. Talk to us. Now it was us. Not him. Not Derek. Not content family. Just us, the word people remember when the boat starts leaking. At 11:13 a.m., I sat in a quiet booth at the public library. Open laptop. Files backed up. Deeds scanned. Passwords changed. The collar sat beside the mousepad. A man in a nearby booth gave me a strange look when he saw it, but I didn't care. That collar had seen more loyalty in its years than both my children combined. At noon, I turned off my phone and leaned back. The first strike was complete. And the silence on their end? It wasn't peace. It was pressure. The kind that builds before something cracks. By 12:17 p.m., the DJ they'd hired for their next party drove off mid-song. Because when the invoice hit, the payment bounced. And from across the street, I watched the music die with it. The silence didn't last long. By the next morning, the calls started again. Not from Anna. Not at first. Blocked number. I let it ring. Then came another. Unknown caller. I ignored it. Then the voicemails poured in, each one darker than the last. Derek first. You think you're clever? That money was tied to vendors. You're gonna bankrupt your own name. Then Madison. I'll ruin you, old man. You think anyone's gonna feel bad for a bitter widower who stole his own son's house? That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. Then came the real voice, the one that hit different. Anna. Dad, I don't know what's happening anymore, she whispered. Derek said you were being paranoid, but the insurance bounced this morning. And the tax notice came. I thought he handled all that. There it was. The first crack in the glass. I paused. Pressed replay. Listened again. I thought he handled all that. Not we. Not Derek and I. Just he. Her voice faltered near the end of the message, like she wanted to say more, but didn't know how. Good. Let doubt do its work. By 10 a.m., I'd received an email from Derek. Subject, final warning. Message, put it all back. Or I swear, I'll file abandonment and sue for full control. Abandonment. As if leaving the house was the same as leaving the family. As if walking out was walking away. I forwarded the email straight to David, my lawyer friend. His reply was immediate. Let him try. We're already in motion. And if he pushes harder, we'll push louder. That day, I returned to the bank, again. Not for damage control, but to finalize the transfer of liquid savings into a secure legal holding account. One Derek couldn't sniff out. As the teller handed me the receipt, I noticed her name tag, Daisy. I didn't cry. But something in my throat twisted. Hard. Back at the motel, the voicemail light blinked again. This time, from a sheriff's department number. Mr. Carson, we received a wellness check request filed under your name. Caller claimed concern due to erratic behavior and property disputes. Standard procedure. Are you available to confirm safety in person? Wellness check. They were trying to paint me unstable now. I drove straight to the sheriff's station. Walked through the front door with documents in hand. The receptionist blinked. You're Mr. Carson? Yes. We had a call, she said, motioning behind her. The sheriff himself stepped out, gray-stubbled and square-jawed. Heard someone thinks you're losing your marbles. I smiled grimly. Well, I've still got enough marbles to know when I'm being set up. I handed him the file, fraud report, revocation of joint access, digital forgery claim, all stamped and logged. He skimmed. Nodded. Well, Mr. Carson, looks to me like you're not crazy, you're just not getting walked on. Do I need to worry about him filing police charges? The sheriff smirked. Not unless he wants to bring this whole mess into court, which, by the looks of it, he really shouldn't. Before I left, he said something that stuck. Lot of folks think loyalty means staying quiet. But sometimes, speaking up is the only way to stay honest. I drove off without responding. I didn't need words. The collar on the passenger seat said enough. That evening, the threats escalated again. This time not just from voices, but from noise. Cars peeled out of the driveway. Someone blasted music at midnight. I watched from the lot across the street, parked in shadows, lights off. At one point, Derek stumbled out, yelling into his phone. "She lied, man. She said it was already co-signed." "What do you mean she pulled the invoice?" Then he threw the phone at the front lawn and screamed. In that moment, under the streetlight, he looked like a child throwing a tantrum. Anna followed him out. Her voice reached my ears faintly. "You told me it was legal." "I thought it was." "You said he agreed." "He did. Just not in writing, but—" "You're gambling, Derek. You gambled everything." That was all I needed to hear. It wasn't public yet, not in the sense of a church or a courtroom. But the audience was building. 2 neighbors peeked from porches. Someone across the street filmed with their phone. The fallout wasn't far behind. That night, a paper was taped to their door. In bold print. "Notice of investigation, title fraud under review." And someone, probably a neighbor, scrawled in Sharpie underneath. "Whose house is it now?" It happened at the church steps. I hadn't planned to speak. I'd come for the quiet. Sunday mornings at Pastor Clark's gave me space. No judgment. No questions. Just breath between bruises. But gossip doesn't sleep in Clearfield. As soon as I stepped out of my truck, 3 people turned their heads. Mrs. Levinson nudged her husband. "That's him, the father." Mr. Rowley, who once borrowed my ladder and never returned it, muttered, "Son's got him in legal hell." Even the choir girl, barely 16, whispered too loudly, "Didn't his dog run away or something?" I kept walking. Collar in my coat pocket. My hand never left it. Inside, the pews buzzed. Not with hymns, but with the sound of side eyes and open mouths. They weren't worshipping. They were watching. Pastor Clark stepped to the front, flipping through his notes, then hesitated. He looked up and found me. Held my eyes. "I wasn't going to do this," he said, folding his sermon closed. "But we don't just come here to sing. We come to face truth." He looked at the congregation. Then back at me. "William, would you mind standing?" A hush fell. I stood slowly. "This town owes you more than side glances and gossip," Pastor Clark said. "You've walked through fire, most of us watched from a safe distance. But some things deserve clarity." He motioned gently. "If you have something to say, this house will hear it." Every eye turned. Every breath held. I walked slowly to the front. Stopped by the pulpit. Took out the collar. Held it in both hands like an artifact. "This," I said quietly, "never lied to me." A few heads tilted. This collar didn't sign contracts it didn't understand. Didn't sell memories for TikToks. Didn't smile in my face while stealing from under me. I looked straight at Mr. Rowley. "This collar," I continued, "sat beside my wife's bed until the end. It waited by the door when I worked late. And it never, not once, asked me to be more than what I already was." I turned slightly. "Can any of you say the same about your children?" A silence deeper than prayer followed. I looked at Pastor Clark. I didn't come to accuse. I came to remind. I laid the collar gently on the altar. Let the leather speak where words fell short. When I turned to leave, no one stopped me. But no one whispered either. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves scattered across the parking lot like applause with nowhere to go. And there, waiting by my truck, was Anna. Arms folded. Eyes red. "I didn't know," she said before I could speak. "Not the signature. Not the money. He told me you were just depressed." Clinging to things. I raised an eyebrow. I was. I reached inside my coat and pulled out the collar again. This is the last thing in this town that still remembers who I am. She stepped forward. I was wrong. I know. I want to help. Do you? I asked. Or do you just want off the sinking ship? Her face tightened. Look, she said, voice low, he got a letter from the state. They're investigating now. Title fraud. If they rule it illegal, he loses everything. He already did, I said. She hesitated. I want to testify. My breath caught. What? I want to testify. I'll sign. I'll say I knew. That I doubted. That I stayed quiet. Her eyes met mine fully now. It's not enough, I know. But, maybe it's a start. I nodded. You always were the one who listened better than you spoke. She smiled, almost. Then she said something I didn't expect. Dad. I still have Daisy's bowl. I didn't let him throw it out. I couldn't. Something in me cracked. Not broke, but cracked in a way that let the light back in. That night, the news spread faster than wildfire. The clip from church went viral. Someone had filmed the whole speech. Comments flooded in. This man just broke me with a dog collar. He's the father we don't deserve. I hope his son gets nothing but court dates. And then, one more twist. A local journalist named Emmett Roth ran a column in the Clearfield Gazette titled, "Not just a dog, the collar that shamed a generation." Inside, he wrote. They called him bitter. Old. Stubborn. But William Carson stood taller with a strip of leather than most men do in million-dollar suits. His son may own a bank account, but he doesn't own loyalty. Or dignity. Or truth. The next morning, I woke up to a knock at the motel door. A man in a suit stood there, badge clipped to his belt. Mr. Carson, he asked. I'm Agent Langley with State Fraud Division. We'd like to schedule a formal deposition. Also, this is for you. He handed me a folder. Inside, court date confirmation. The case was moving forward. And for the first time since Daisy vanished. I felt seen. In the same folder, a handwritten note had been slipped in. 4 words. No signature. She never left town. And beside it, an address. Rain came down in sheets the morning I walked into David's office. He'd moved out of retirement for this. Said the case gave him purpose. Said it gave him something righteous. He greeted me with a nod, no small talk. This is it, he said, placing a thick manila folder on the desk between us. The filing's official. The fraud report, deposition, co-signer dispute, unauthorized refinance, all locked in. Now we push. The collar sat beside the folder. He'd seen it so many times now he didn't ask. Didn't need to. What's the next move? I asked. David flipped the folder open. Court's greenlit a hearing. We're requesting emergency injunction to freeze the house's title and prevent any sale, remodeling, or income generation. In plain English? They can't touch the house. No parties. No deals. No more Carson House content. I exhaled. Good. And, he continued, we're serving them this afternoon. I looked up sharply. Today? He nodded. A deputy will walk up to that pretty little front porch you built and hand your son the legal equivalent of a thunderclap. I smiled. First real one in weeks. Then he handed me a copy of the complaint. Want to read it? I opened it. Line after line. Charge after charge. Fraudulent signature. Unauthorized POA filing. Deceptive financial conduct. Attempted dispossession. Coercion of a vulnerable adult. All of it. By the time I reached the bottom, my hands were trembling, but not from fear. "This is war," I said. "No," David replied. "This is justice." Later that day, we waited in David's car across the street from the house. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, blurring the windows just enough to make the house feel like a memory. Then came the moment. Sheriff's deputy. Clipboard in hand. He walked up the porch steps like he'd done it 1,000 times, but this time, it mattered. Derek opened the door in sweatpants, holding a smoothie. He barely had time to blink. "Derek Carson?" "Yeah." "You've been served." He took the papers. "Read the first line." And I saw it, the exact moment the smirk died. He turned pale. Stepped back. The door slammed. Madison's voice rang from inside. "What the hell is that?" I couldn't hear his answer. But I didn't need to. The silence said it all. I turned to David. "Do we hit them with anything else?" He nodded. "I leaked the filing to the press. Local and regional. We included that article from the Gazette. People are watching now. That collar speech made you a local hero." "I don't want hero status," I muttered. "I want my name back on my house. And you'll get it." That evening, the email came in. A lawyer from Derek's camp had replied to David's formal filing. Subject line: "We request settlement negotiation." David leaned back in his chair, sipping tea. "They want to talk. Want it off the books." Quiet. "What do we say?" He smiled. "We say no." Next morning, David filed a motion to bring the full hearing public. No closed doors. No confidential resolutions. It would all play out in court. Community room. Open seats. Reporters welcome. When the news hit, the Clearfield Facebook group exploded. "Wait, wasn't that the dog guy from church? I heard the son tried to evict him. From his own house. Carson House? More like Fraud Mansion." People began choosing sides. But this time, most stood with me. Even the banker who refinanced the loan quietly released a statement saying, documents appeared valid but did not follow internal protocol. Translation: we're not protecting him. One final twist came by week's end. A young man showed up outside the diner where I'd been nursing a coffee. Looked barely 20. Nervous. He approached, clutching a small envelope. "You're Mr. Carson, right?" I nodded. He handed me the envelope. "She told me to give this to you." She said, she didn't know how else to say sorry. "Who?" "She said you'd know." He walked off before I could stop him. Inside the envelope, a photograph. Daisy. Sitting in the corner of a quiet backyard, familiar fence, familiar bowl. On the back, written in my daughter's handwriting. "She never left town. I found her. I couldn't give her back yet. But I didn't let him sell her." I placed the photo down, heart pounding. Then I looked at the collar on the table. "I'm getting you home," I whispered. That night, David sent me one final message. Judge moved up the hearing. 1 week. And below that. Get ready. You're testifying first. The morning of the hearing, I woke before dawn. I didn't eat. Couldn't. Not when everything inside me twisted like a wire under strain. I laid out 2 things on the motel desk. The legal folder. And the collar. One was the past they tried to erase. The other was the proof I never left. By 8 a.m., I stood outside the courthouse. Small building, old bricks, clock tower that hadn't worked since the 90s. But today, It might as well have been the Supreme Court. David met me by the steps, crisp in a gray suit. He handed me a copy of my statement. "You don't have to read it all," he said. "Speak how you want. Just remember why you're here." "I do," I said, my voice steady. "They forgot who paid for the bricks." Inside, the courtroom filled slowly. Local news camera in the back. A few folding chairs for observers. But the gallery was fuller than expected: neighbors, ex-co-workers, even the gas station clerk who once gave me free coffee when Daisy passed. And Anna, she sat near the back, not with Derek. Not anymore. When Derek finally entered, he looked wrong. Suit too tight. Hair disheveled. Madison clinging to him like a PR handler. But worse than that. He looked small. No swagger. No smile. Just a boy in a suit pretending not to sweat. The judge, an older woman with steel-gray hair and zero tolerance for theatrics, called the room to order. "Mr. Carson, you may begin." David stood. "Your Honor, my client will deliver his testimony directly. No theatrics. Just truth." I rose. Walked to the stand. And with one hand on the Bible, the other still clutching the worn leather collar, I spoke. "I didn't raise a thief," I began. "But that's what my son became." A few gasps rippled. I continued, slow and clear. "He forged my signature. Filed refinance documents using a power of attorney I never approved. Tried to push me out of my own home, all to fund a party house dressed up as a business." I raised the collar. "This belonged to Daisy. She lived longer in that house than anyone on his guest list. She didn't lie. She didn't steal. And when I came home, she greeted me, not as an investor, or a wallet, but as a father." A long pause. Dead quiet. Then I turned to the judge. "I am not here to punish. I'm here to reclaim." When I returned to my seat, David slid over a phone. "Look at this," he whispered. "A viral clip from 10 minutes ago. Outside the courthouse. Someone had filmed Derek arriving. The camera zoomed in just as he slammed the car door and barked at Madison, 'Don't screw this up, I swear to God.' She rolled her eyes. 'You already did that.' And behind them, clear as day, Anna stood alone, watching them argue. The caption beneath the video read, "This is what betrayal looks like. #Carson House Collapse." I looked across the aisle. Derek hadn't seen it yet. But someone else had. A neighbor from our street, Tom Harris, a man who once helped me repair the back fence, stood slowly from the gallery and walked out. Not in protest. In disappointment. That hit harder than any gavel. Next came the court clerk. She read the full list of filings. Fraudulent co-signature. Unauthorized POA activation. Deceptive business registration under contested property. Attempted coercion during estate dispute. Then came the evidence, the bank emails, the text chains, the bounced invoices, the sheriff's report. David presented it all. And at the end, he said just one thing. "Sometimes, dignity is property too. And my client deserves his back." The judge nodded once. "I've heard enough. My ruling will be issued in 48 hours. Outside, the air was thick with tension. Clouds hovered, but no rain fell. Then it came. The exposure. A news van was parked by the curb. A reporter stood in front of the camera, mid-broadcast. "As you can see, what started as a family finance dispute has turned into a town-wide referendum on legacy, honesty, and digital delusion. Mr. Carson Sr." She turned toward me. "Do you have a comment for the public?" I didn't stop walking. I just held up the collar. "This never lied," I said. She blinked. Excuse me? I kept walking. That's the comment. But behind me, a louder sound stopped the world. Crash. Derek's voice. Shouting. I turned back. He had kicked over a trash bin on the sidewalk. Papers spilled. People stared. Don't record me, he barked at a bystander filming. But it was too late. Phones were out. Cameras were on. One video went up in seconds. Entitled "Son Loses It After Court Hearing, Father Wins Town." And then came the visual sting. A neighbor, Mrs. Ruiz, opened her window just as Derek screamed. She didn't say a word. She just held up a framed photo. It was me, on my porch, holding Daisy. Old. From a community barbecue years back. She said nothing. But the image went viral in minutes. That night, someone dumped a dresser and 2 garbage bags on the curb in front of my house. Derek's things. A neighbor's note stuck to the top drawer. Don't bring shame down our street again. The next Sunday, the church pews were full before the first bell rang. Word had spread, not just about the trial, or the news clips, or the curb furniture, but about what was coming today. Pastor Clark had cleared the second half of the service. He called it a time for truth. I sat in the second row. Same seat I'd taken every week for 15 years. But this time, no one avoided my eyes. They didn't whisper. They nodded. Dignity has a gravity to it. And now, mine pulled people in. Anna sat beside me, hands folded tight, face pale but set. When Pastor Clark stepped up to the podium, he didn't need notes. Sometimes, he began, truth doesn't whisper. It walks right up to our doorstep, dragging a broken fence, a cut line of credit, and a dog collar with more integrity than $1 million deed. Scattered chuckles. Mostly from older folks who knew. Then his tone sobered. But what happens when betrayal isn't between strangers, but blood? He turned to me. William, would you come up? I rose. Calm. Solid. I brought the collar with me. Walked to the front and laid it on the altar like before. I turned to face the room. You all know most of it, I said. The papers, the parties, the lies. But what you don't know is how close I came to believing them. I paused. My son told me I was a burden. A relic. My daughter, I looked at Anna, stood beside him, silent, while he emptied my accounts and stole my home. Anna lowered her eyes, but didn't flinch. I nodded. But guilt only sticks when love was there first. And she had it. Just buried under fear. I stepped aside. Looked at her. Your turn. She stood slowly. Walked forward with trembling steps. Took the mic. And then, she surprised everyone. I was ashamed, she said, voice soft. Not of my father. Of what I became while watching him get erased. A hush fell. I watched Derek spin lie after lie. I heard him say Dad was too old to understand equity, too soft to fight back. And I nodded. Because it was easier than standing alone. She looked at me. Eyes glassy. But he never fought back for pride. He fought because everything he built was being dressed up in hashtags and handed out like candy. And I let him. She turned to the congregation. I came here to say I'm sorry. But more than that, I came to give this back. She held up a set of papers. Copied deposition. Signed testimony. I filed this yesterday. I listed every moment I knew, and stayed silent. And I told the court, I want no share of the house, the assets, the estate. Gasps echoed. Someone in the back muttered, God bless her. Anna laid the paper beside the collar. 2 offerings. Truth and proof. Pastor Clark returned to the podium. Cleared his throat, visibly moved. May we never again call age weakness. May we never again confuse followers for loyalty. He placed his hand on the collar. And may we remember that some names are earned, not inherited. After the service, people didn't just shake my hand. They held it. Mr. Rowley returned my ladder. Mrs. Levinson asked if she could help clean the old porch. Even the choir girl who'd once whispered too loud gave me a quiet, "Sorry, sir." Outside, a small crowd waited by the church gates. Local reporter, Emmett Roth, stepped forward. "Mr. Carson," he said, "mind if I quote your daughter?" "Quote whatever you want," I replied. "Just print this, too." I reached into my pocket. Held up the collar again. This is what loyalty looks like. This is what never left. Flashbulbs snapped. Recorders lifted. Anna slipped her hand into mine. And for the first time in months, we walked side by side. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the old oak tree on my front lawn, a letter slid through the motel door. No return address. Just one line inside. "If you want your dog back, come alone." Midnight. Midnight came, and with it, silence. No wind. No passing cars. Just the ticking of a cheap motel clock and the weight of a collar in my coat pocket. The letter had said to come alone. I did. Because something in that handwriting, crooked, rushed, felt like Anna. Or at least, someone trying not to be seen. I followed the address. It led to an old warehouse near the edge of town, one that used to house county equipment before budget cuts left it to dust. The gate was unlocked. Inside, under a flickering overhead light, stood a crate. Not a box. A crate, like the kind shelters use when they don't know if a dog will bite or run. I stepped closer. And there she was. Daisy. Thinner. Older. But unmistakably her. She didn't bark. She didn't lunge. She just looked up, and wagged her tail once. Soft. Slow. Trust without demand. My knees gave out. I dropped beside the crate, whispering her name like a prayer. She licked my hand. And in that moment, the months of rage, betrayal, and grief collapsed into one sob I couldn't swallow. There was a note taped to the side. "I'm sorry I let him take her. But I never stopped feeding her. I couldn't keep lying. It was Anna." I drove back slowly. One hand on the wheel, the other resting gently on Daisy's back. She rode silent. Regal. Like nothing had broken in her world, only shifted. Back at the motel, she curled up at the foot of the bed like she'd never left. I didn't sleep. I planned. And by dawn, the final strike was ready. 2 days later, the courtroom was packed. The judge returned with her ruling, face unreadable. In light of clear evidence, she began, "This court finds that the defendant, Derek Carson, engaged in fraudulent conduct, willfully misrepresented power of attorney status, and attempted to dispossess the rightful owner of his property." She looked at him directly. "You forfeited more than legal rights. You forfeited moral standing." She turned to me. "Mr. Carson, the house deed is restored to your sole ownership. All financial assets linked to it are to be returned. Immediate vacate order issued to current occupants." Gasps. Madison let out a soft, "What?" Derek sank into his seat, face blank. But I wasn't done. David stood. "Your Honor, one final motion." She raised an eyebrow. "Yes?" He handed her a notarized document. "This is Mr. Carson's updated estate declaration. He would like to read it into public record." She nodded. "Proceed." I stood. Cleared my throat. And read. As of today, all estate benefits, real property rights, and posthumous claims are revoked from both my children, Derek and Anna Carson. The room gasped. Anna's eyes welled, but she didn't argue. Because she knew what was coming. I continued. In their place, I hereby donate the Carson house, upon my passing, to the Clearfield Animal Rescue Foundation, to fund the construction of a no-kill shelter. All proceeds, value, and legacy shall serve those who never demanded trust, but earned it. I reached into my pocket. Held up the collar. This stays with me until then. The judge stared. Silent. Then she nodded once. Request granted. Motion filed. The courtroom erupted, not with noise, but with murmurs of stunned awe. Derek looked like a man unplugged from his own movie. No mansion. No inheritance. No escape. Even Madison stepped back from him, shaking her head. Outside, reporters swarmed. Mr. Carson, why a dog shelter? I smiled. Because loyalty should sleep under a roof, too. By evening, the story had gone national. Headlines read: Father donates entire estate to shelter after son's fraud. Justice has a collar, the man who gave it all for his dog. TikTok star evicted by own dad after court bombshell. Anna met me outside the courthouse. I understand, she whispered. I don't deserve anything. I looked at her. You deserve the chance to start over. But not off my name. She nodded. Then knelt beside Daisy. I missed you, she said softly. Daisy licked her hand. But her eyes turned to me. Always watching. Always waiting. That night, I stood on the porch, the real porch, while movers packed up Derek's gear onto a flatbed. A reporter shouted, "What are you going to do with the house now?" I glanced down at Daisy, her collar gleaming under the porch light. First thing, I said. I'm repainting this porch hunter green. It's coming home. The movers were nearly done by sunset. Derek's designer furniture sat on the curb like discarded stage props. A velvet headboard. A cocktail cart. A busted neon sign that read, Carson House. The show was over. But he hadn't taken his final bow yet. I sat on the porch, my porch, Daisy curled at my feet, tail brushing against my boot like a metronome of calm. Then I heard it. Footsteps on gravel. 2 pairs. They stood at the gate like kids caught stealing. Not like adults who had spent months trying to erase me. Anna spoke first. Dad, can we talk? I didn't answer. Just leaned back slightly, hand resting on Daisy's collar. She took that as a yes. They stepped forward, Derek trailing like a deflated balloon. His hair was a mess. Hoodie wrinkled. No camera crew. No filters. Just shame. We didn't come for money, Anna said. You already took it, I replied. She nodded. I know. I don't think you do. Derek finally spoke. I messed up. I blinked slowly. That's your line? After months of theft, slander, and trespass? He looked away. Anna tried again. We thought we were helping. No, I said. You thought you were winning. The porch creaked as I stood. Daisy shifted slightly, alert now. You took everything that wasn't nailed down. And when that ran dry, you tried to nail me down. Legally. Financially. Even mentally. You filed a wellness check, Derek. You wanted the sheriff to think I'd lost it. He flinched. That wasn't my idea. Don't lie, I said, sharp now. Not here. Not in front of her. I pointed to Daisy. Her ears flicked, tail still. This caller sat in silence while I was called irrelevant, stubborn, unstable. But not once did it question me. I turned to Anna. You started to see it. I know you did. And I'm grateful for what you did in court. Her eyes softened. Then maybe, we can rebuild. I looked at the sky. Long pause. Then. No. One word. Heavy as a gavel. Anna's face fell. Derek's fists clenched. You always taught us about forgiveness, she said. About grace. Grace, I repeated. Yes. And you know what grace is? A gift. Not an obligation. I walked down the porch steps slowly. Stopped inches from them. You don't get to weaponize my values and then ask for a refund. Derek tried a final push. I've got nowhere else to go. Then maybe you'll learn something. He stepped forward. You're really gonna leave your own son out in the cold? You already left yourself there, I said. I'm just turning off the porch light. Silence. Then Anna whispered, do you hate us? I sighed. No. Hate would be easier. But I don't owe you the version of me you buried for clicks and credit lines. I turned back toward the house. Paused. I left something in the mailbox for you. They blinked. Confused. Derek opened the lid. Inside, 2 envelopes. One with his name. One with Anna's. They opened them. Inside, a single photo each. Him, as a boy, holding Daisy's leash. Grinning. Her, in pigtails, asleep on my shoulder during a dog park picnic. On the back of Derek's, this is what trust used to look like. On Anna's, this is what love without cost looked like. Neither spoke. I walked inside. Locked the door. Daisy followed, calm as ever. That night, I poured 1 cup of coffee. Set it down next to the collar on the kitchen table. And for the first time in months, I didn't wait for a knock. Because there was nothing left to say. The porch was green now. Not just any green, hunter green. The same shade I'd used back in '94 when I first built this home with my bare hands, 2 weeks after losing my job at the mill. Back when paint was more than color, it was proof. Proof that I wasn't done. Now, every stroke of that green whispered the same thing to anyone who passed. I stayed. They didn't. The town saw it too. I didn't need a billboard. Didn't need a podcast. Didn't need a TikTok filter. I had a porch. And a name that outlived the scandal. Clearfield didn't forget. The mayor showed up unannounced with a plaque for community resilience. The local diner renamed their Saturday breakfast special the Carson Classic. Even the bank manager, the bank, sent a letter apologizing for clerical oversights in the original refinancing. Too little, too late. But I kept it. Framed it. Hung it beside the fireplace. And then came the final act. The shelter. It wasn't built yet. That would take months. But the land transfer was complete, zoning approved, and the foundation ceremony was scheduled. Clearfield Animal Rescue Foundation broke ground on a chilly Tuesday morning. Press showed up. So did families. Old women in church hats. Kids holding cardboard signs that read, "Loyalty lives here." I stood beside Pastor Clark as the first dig was made. But the real moment came when Emmett Roth, the reporter from the Gazette, pulled a cloth from the ground. Beneath it was a plaque. Steel. Cold and shining. Etched into it. The Daisy Home, for the forgotten, the faithful, and the fiercely loved. Donated by William Carson, who lost a house but found something better. Underneath that, her collar. Sealed inside a shadow box, bolted into the foundation. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel it. But because Daisy didn't need my tears to know she mattered. She was there that morning. Old now. Limping a little. Gray in the muzzle. But proud. She sat right beside the stone as they lowered it. One paw forward, watching. Like a sentry guarding something sacred. Someone asked if I'd like to speak. I walked to the mic, nodded at the crowd, and said the last thing I ever needed to say on the matter. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what refuses to be stolen. And with that, I stepped down. That night, the porch light was on. Not for my children. But for me. Daisy lay curled in the corner. I had an old flannel draped over her like a blanket. A new bowl with her name etched into the side sat near the door. Stainless steel. Clean. Permanent. Just like the collar now buried in concrete and steel. The TV was off. No noise. Just the sound of wind in the oak tree and peace breathing in the corners of a house that knew every inch of my grief, and still stood. I made one last cup of coffee. Poured it into my favorite mug. Walked it out to the porch, placed it on the railing, and sat in my usual chair. Behind me, the door was locked. Not out of fear. But because dignity deserves boundaries. That's something my son never learned. Something my daughter finally did. And something I will now carry, alone, but never lonely. The green porch. The steel plaque at the shelter. The collar inside it. And one old man sitting under a quiet sky, sipping coffee, not as a victim. But as the last man in town who never needed a second chance to do right the first time. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. What does loyalty mean to you? And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this one.